Freedom is the right to tell what they do not want to hear. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. Tired of the same repetitive government narratives? Then wave goodbye to the distractions and rhetoric of corporate media. For this is Anti-Media Radio.
But I want to get the language right. The government is in trouble.
You're all a bunch of slaves! Bunch of slaves!
What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but it's love and wisdom and compassion toward one another.
What's your definition of media?
And now, here's your host, S.M. Gibson.
Welcome to another episode of Anti-Media Radio. This is your host, S.M. Gibson. You are listening live on UCY.TV. It is February the 23rd, 2016. There is a lot going on in the news. We are broadcasting live to you from San Diego, California. Sitting directly to my right now is the editor-in-chief of Anti-Media, Nick Burnaby. We will know him from Monday and Wednesday nights here on UCY. Nick, what's going on?
Oh, I'm doing good. Just keeping an eye on what's going on in Nevada. Apparently, it's a real circus out there. And we also watched what was that, a town hall of some sort? It wasn't a debate.
Yeah, it was the Hillary Clinton show, the town hall debate.
Yeah, and it was pretty interesting actually. I mean, Bernie Sanders, what he said was pretty much same old stuff that he's always saying. Hillary Clinton got kind of stumbled up when a question came in about Libya, though, and that to me was pretty interesting. Libya is probably the single biggest, quote-unquote, accomplishment that she had as far as overt regime change while she was in the Obama administration. And as most of the listeners probably know, I mean, that has turned into a total cluster F-word over there in Libya, where you got a failed state, you got dozens of vying factors trying to take control of the government. You got over 50,000 people dead ever since we knocked out Gaddafi. And Hillary Clinton is up there trying to sell this thing as some kind of win for democracy. I don't know if you noticed that, but she talked about how they had these free elections and how they elected a government. And it's like, yeah, but that government doesn't even exist today.
I wonder if they had super delegates in that. Oh.
Yeah, I wonder if the Libyan party had super delegates so that their votes were divided.
And tosses and card flips.
The luck of the draw.
That's it. I also want to bring on our producer that I'm usually sitting in the studio with, and I will be back in the studio with later this week, Mr. Shannon Madden. Shannon, what's going on?
What's going on, Mr. Gibson? Mr. Burnaby, how y'all doing this evening?
I can't complain. If I did, nobody'd pay attention anyway, so that's okay.
I damn sure won't.
And Miss Claire Burnish, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm here. And Kevin Knight. Kevin, what's going on?
Hey, man. Doing good. How are y'all?
Doing good. Your favorite topic, Claire, of course, politics.
Yay.
Yeah, your favorite.
Don't make her hang up now. Come on.
But, yeah, as much as we're watching the country go up in flames right now, I think the flames are rising higher right now over the GOP and the Republican Party. Absolute chaos. What's going on in Nevada right now, and really the entire party as a whole. I don't know if anybody's keeping up with it, but right now they're making all these claims. Right now in Nevada, they're saying that the caucuses are rigged, and there's all these Trump supporters trying to overthrow the caucuses, similar to what we saw with Hillary when, it was barely reported on. But this is coming out of Rubio's camp, of course. And so because, Mr. Establishment Pretty Boy, who likes to go to phone parties apparently in Miami, he's not winning, so they're going to talk about it. Shannon, what do you think this is even relevant? Do you think this is actually happening? Or do you think this is just a ploy by the establishment to go after somebody that they actually have some sort of fear of, even though I heard the term today, great term, that Trump is somehow an anarcho-fascist?
Well, first off, I think everybody is very clear on my stance about who the real gay candidate is in the Republican Party. That's Ted Cruz. Come on now. That is a big old queen. And you can't tell me otherwise.
But he's gone. He's not going to...
Oh, no. He's still lingering around somewhere, I'm sure. He's not completely gone. He's going to stick around until somebody gives him a handout. Come on.
There's a story going around Rubio in Miami that's actually come out from the gay community, and they're saying the only reason they're talking about it and outing him is because he's been so vehemently against gay rights. And they feel like, that's the justification for doing this. They said otherwise they would not be doing it. So that's kind of the story. I don't know if it's true. I've never been to Miami. I don't know Marco Rubio, and I don't really care what he does in his personal time. I just don't want him to be president of the United States.
Well, the thing to me that was really interesting, and as we were talking about, we were watching this town hall thing with Bernie and Hillary, and it was on CNN, and we had it. Someone was pirating it. I don't know who it was, but we were watching it because we don't have the cable access here. But the thing that was funny to me is that right after that town hall, the CNN headline news came on, and they literally were talking about how there may be, some kind of intimidation going on at the Nevada caucuses, and talking about, I don't want to go so far to call it voter fraud, but, they were talking about that kind of thing, tampering, intimidation. But we didn't hear about any of that stuff on CNN when it was Hillary Clinton doing it in Iowa.
And was caught red-handed doing it.
Exactly. And so, you see the double standard here. It's when somebody that is, when it's Rubio getting the short end of the stick, now it's a big deal.
Short end of the stick. I see what you did there.
Pun intended. And when it's Bernie Sanders getting the short end of the stick, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to mention it. Oh, we're just going to pretend it didn't happen, And so, again, we're looking at media manipulation, voter intimidation, that kind of thing going on, and a double standard that we're seeing play out because if it comes from one camp, it's okay. If it comes from now it's being accused of the Trump people, well, now it's a big deal because obviously Trump isn't the guy that the Republican establishment wants, so they're going to make a big stink about this.
I mean, the more it goes on, I hate to admit it, but, he's the anarcho-fascist. He is not who the establishment wants in any way, shape, or form. I think that's very apparent at this point. Despite any of the, the horrible things he'll do, he's not part of the plan. He's going
to make Germany great again, right?
I wasn't aware that anarcho-fascist is a thing.
Well, it is now.
Apparently it's become one with Trump.
It's become one today. As of today,
anarcho-fascist. I have to write that one down.
As of today, it's a thing. So that's what I think Donald Trump is. Kevin, you're being mighty quiet over there, and I know you've got a lot of thoughts on this topic.
Man, I'm all over the place on this topic. I ran into somebody today who I thought was who I've always respected politically, or at least for their views politically. And for a lot of their just general knowledge about a lot of events going on. The guy was really educated when it comes to finance. And he finally, for whatever reason, conceded that he thought Trump should actually win the presidency. And he tried to, he continued to give me this long explanation for why. And, and I could not believe it. And of all people to hear this from, it was him, but, I think it just echoes more and more sentiment. I think we see more and more, at least I'm running into more and more people that didn't carry the way that I think are finally getting on the Trump train, unfortunately. And I think a lot of people are doing it now at this point. If they haven't already been a Trump fan, a lot of them are just jumping on the train at this point for so they don't feel left out in case Trump wins. I see him going forward with it, but like Nick said, it's more media manipulation, and the smaller guy, I guess the less establishment characters, definitely getting screwed. It's a little bit reminiscent of Ron Paul screwing here just a few years ago. So I know there's quite a few libertarian and liberty-minded folks that are kind of feeling a little bit of sympathy for what some of the Bernie fans are folks are going through. So I can't expect very much, unfortunately.
There's a huge, I think, correlation, not policy-wise, but campaign-wise, between Bernie Sanders and Ron Paul. I think we're seeing a lot of the same exact tactics. I think we're seeing a lot of the same exact from the media against him, and I think on the other side we're seeing a lot of the same grassroots support and the establishment, at least with Ron Paul, and I think we talked about this last night a little bit. His numbers were in the 20% range. We're talking about a guy with 50%.
In Iowa, yeah. In Iowa, he was around 20, but nationally, he was never over like 5 or 10. With Bernie, I mean, we're talking about a lot more people that are going to be really upset if
it's a lot harder to suppress.
If they feel, or at least they perceive, that they've been shortchanged when it comes to the electoral system. And so that's going to be a dynamic that we're going to be seeing heading into 2017, if Hillary does become the candidate. We all know that Hillary would probably lose against any of the Republicans. In fact, the polling has shown that Bernie Sanders is pretty much the only guy that could beat all the Republicans. And so if the Democratic Party were being completely honest and they actually wanted to win the election, they wouldn't be stepping in line behind Hillary Clinton like they have been. They'd be stepping in line behind Bernie Sanders. But obviously, Sanders is a threat to the party. I mean, we all know under Obama, the Democrats have become the war party. Some people would call them neoliberal on economics. I'd call them neoconservative on foreign policy. Obama is definitely a neoconservative on foreign policy. I mean, secret drone kill lists. Okay. I mean, these are the wet dreams of the Bush administration.
Let's just okay. So a lot of people are already assuming. Let's just assume, for the sake of conversation, that it's going to be Trump, Hillary. That's what a lot of people are already projecting, given the outcomes of the early caucuses and the primary. The Republican, in that case, would be the one against the Iraq war, against war, and for free trade. The Democrat would be for war and for all these horrible trade deals that her husband helped implement with NAFTA in the 90s.
Bill Clinton sold that, and he passed it, signed it. I think Hillary Clinton even helped campaign for it. You got this dynamic here with Trump and Bernie. I mean, if you look at it from a foreign policy aspect and an economics aspect, I hate to say it, but Trump and Bernie are very similar, man. They're both not neoliberals on economics, and they're both not neocons on foreign policy, at least not generally.
It's because they don't have the same alliance.
In the last Democratic debate and the last Republican debate, both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump had criticized regime change in Libya. They criticized regime change tonight. Bernie Sanders criticized the CIA for its meddling in foreign affairs. And Trump has come out against the Iraq war repeatedly. I mean, these are not typical neoconservatives on foreign policy. They may not be perfect by any means, but they are not what the neocon establishment wants to be running. They need to also have, not only do they need someone to put in place that's going to carry out these policies, they need this rhetoric, they need this propaganda in the debates to sell these ideas to the American people. And I think that is probably the most dangerous thing, because any president can come in power as a lame duck and no one will let them do anything. They won't be able to get nothing done. That's fine. But in these debates, this is their best primetime chance to sell these wars. And look back at the 2012 Republican debates, all of it was about bombing Iran. Who could bomb Iran first? Some people said they'd bomb Iran on the first day of office. Some people said they'd do it in the first week. Some said they'd look at it for a few months before they drop the bomb. I mean, this is why they're so upset about Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, is they're not winning the propaganda war. I don't really think that they're too concerned about them winning or not, but they're really concerned about losing this propaganda game. This is their best chance to sell these wars.
They've already lost it because the two most popular candidates, and I get, Hillary and Hillary that.
That's the thing, is I don't like Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump. I don't think either one of them are going to fix the country or do anything that actually needs to be done. But I do like the fact that the plans are not going to procedure. I mean, the plans have come unhinged. The train has gone off the tracks. I mean, what we're seeing right now is all these media establishment, the political establishment, squirming in their seats, trying to figure out what in the hell we're going to do next. You know what I mean?
And I agree with you. I think that's good. I think it's good that they are actually against the establishment and against what's going on, and they are thwarting the propaganda to some degree. And, for as much as I think that a lot of us have been critical of Bernie for voting, to fund the Iraq war and stuff, neither of the two, neither Trump nor Bernie, are going to be very pro-war and let's go bomb everybody. And that does worry them. And it presents a very interesting, kind of startling picture that maybe the country is actually fed up with war for once.
Can I just interject here for a second? I heard you guys saying that Trump's not a neoliberal. I definitely agree to the extent that I think that he understands. For example, in the last town hall, Donald Trump came out against our trade agreement. Now, I think that's a point that I think most of us can agree with, and ironically, Hillary Clinton, who used to be a staunch supporter of these agreements such as NAFTA, is now against it. However, I think where he gets it wrong, he said something like, if I was president, I would have the greatest business leaders to help, author these trade agreements. What Mr. Trump fails to realize is that the major corporations helped author all of these trade agreements, and it is them that really put in these toxic policies such as NAFTA that completely destroyed Mexico. You have to remember that Mexico fought a bloody revolution to have communal farming, and then NAFTA totally destroyed that. In America we have subsidized farming, so it's actually more economically feasible for a Mexican to buy an American agricultural product than to grow something in their backyard. So then immediately had all of Mexico become unemployed, right? So these people had to either turn to crime or they had to flee the country. So if we have these large corporations come in and author new trade agreements, the whole premise of Mr. Trump's campaign, which is the whole immigration issue, is not going to get better. In fact, what he's proposing is completely antithetical to this point.
Exactly. I think you make a great point there. First on NAFTA, I mean, NAFTA, as you said, it went in and decimated the peasant farming culture down in Mexico with subsidized.
It completely bypassed the Labor Council at the time. If you guys recall, when this was being pushed through, the elections between George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton was going on. That was what was in the news. You guys remember when the TPP was fast-tracked? That wasn't even on the news. The same week, gay marriage was passed through Obergefell versus the United States. I think that was in the case. But that went through a couple days after TPP was fast-tracked. The media always does this. They pass those things, and they heavily cover something else while those trade agreements are going on. Now, for example, with NAFTA, we have a Labor Council that's supposed to review all these trade agreements. And they have a waiting period of like 24 hours. You have to send the trade agreement to them. They have to review it within 24 hours. What actually happened was the agreement was sent to the Labor Council at some absurd time at night. And the trade agreement, you've actually read NAFTA, it's like several thousand pages. So they design it in a way that you can't get labor input. You can't have experts in law read it. It's the corporation. So that's just another point I wanted to throw in. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, back first to NAFTA, I really do want to talk about this a little bit. We're still seeing the effects of NAFTA. So on one hand, as you mentioned with Mexican farmers, they got put out of business because we got a bunch of subsidized, and I hate to say it, but Monsanto corn going down into Mexico very cheaply because the U.S. is subsidizing the hell out of it. And corn is probably the single largest crop in Mexico. They've got over 20 different varieties of indigenous corn, and it's the very cornerstone of their diet with the tortillas and the masa and all the stuff they use that for. And that put a bunch of farmers out of business. Then at the same time, now if you go to the grocery store and you look at all the specialty produce, the strawberries, the bell peppers, all this stuff that's kind of hard to grow. Where's all that stuff coming from? It's coming from Mexico. And what they're doing is you got these big U.S. farming corporations going down. They're leaving the United States. They're going down to Mexico and exploiting the hell out of this third world labor down there, paying people $5 a day for 10 hours of manual labor in the sun. I mean, it throws all factors of human rights and labor standards out the window. That's what these trade agreements do. And as you said, these things are written literally. The TPP, which is the latest incarnation, and NAFTA on steroids, it's literally being written by corporate lobbyists and lawyers. If that doesn't tell you something, it's just basically like Obamacare. It's a very similar idea here. If that doesn't tell you the conflict of interest that we're facing here, and then you got Obama going on TV telling us that it's going to create a bunch of jobs and all, I'm sure that's what these corporate lawyers have in mind. They're going to go create jobs for the working class American. I'm sure that's what they have in mind.
That's what they care about. That's what corporate lawyers usually do care about, I believe.
Corporate lawyers are always looking out for the little guy.
That's it, always. That's what I.
You raised an interesting point there, but it's interesting to me. For example, in Mexico, in southern Mexico, in Chiapas. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Zapatista National Liberation Front, but it's the people are actually surprised that these farmers. Another example, you guys remember the International Coffee Agreement that was not renewed, which totally destroyed the price of coffee, which just so happened the people of southern Mexico made a living off of. And then you have an anti-capitalist movement, the Zapatista National Liberation Front, that rallied and is still in an ongoing conflict against the Mexican government. And you see this all around the world. For example, Greece and Syriza, Podemos in Spain, you see these anti-capitalist movements, and people are actually surprised by it. It's kind of funny.
Kevin, I know you know a lot about this. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, as far as the Zapatista movement, or just the NAFTA too, but it's more importantly the NAFTA. I was a little bit younger when NAFTA passed, so I wasn't aware of it obviously when it came through, but it didn't take me long to learn when I first started kind of looking into some of these global trade agreements that, like you guys said, along with the TPP and the SCP and the Securities and Prosperity Partnership. These are regional agreements, and like Nick said, or the other caller said, these are global agreements, and the people have, we basically are getting screwed here, and it's we have no control over what's being signed. I think it's, Donald Trump voiced a little bit of concern about this, but I don't really personally have a lot of faith in his administration putting up any kind of resistance to it whatsoever. If anything, I feel like he would probably be more willing to go and look at it from a global position and chalk it up to play in the global game. I don't think he's going to have as much pull as he thinks he would. There was a mention about him being possibly a little more anti-war too. I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you, I disagree on that. On that hand, I'd like to agree, but we always think, and a lot of these presidents, Obama was the same way. He was somewhat of an anti-war character before he came into office, and we see what happened with him.
George W. Bush was very much, I don't want to police the world when he was running.
Exactly, and this is why we can't trust the rhetoric. No matter, I don't give a shit, even if Trump is going out there and saying this stuff, I'm glad that it's happening on national television, and who knows how many people are watching it.
It's about more of the culture of where we're at as a country, and I think this is where the establishment sees that they're losing their foothold. Is it's not so much Trump and Bernie as people. They're seeing two candidates, regardless of what they're going to do in office, especially a Republican candidate, and I think that's very, very important, that somebody that's saying these wars are a mistake, they're losing the people that put these warmongers in power.
Exactly. They're losing the rhetoric war. They're losing the propaganda war. I don't think they're going to lose the policy war. I think if Bernie or Trump were to win the presidency, I mean, Bernie Sanders has already said that he'd continue the drone program and stuff. I think Trump, given the opportunity, he'd probably start up another war. It's easy for someone to sit there and criticize it when they're running.
I could see Trump starting a war with his mouth, and it would be somebody we haven't even thought of.
Like you said, Scott, I mean, George Bush ran on this kind of platform. Obama ran on this platform, and both of those candidates came in, and they just carried on the legacy of the guy before them pretty much, while blaming the guy before them for all these other issues, while at the same time carrying on almost identically the policies that were, put in place by their predecessor, and so, I think the main benefit that we're going to see out of this campaign, and I think you touched on it there, is that it's not the policy that we're going to win here. It's this rhetoric war. It's the propaganda war, and it's the public opinion slipping. And it's, sooner or later, it's going to just become, they're going to be able to get away with these policies. They're going to pass the TPP. They're going to do all this shit. Sooner or later, it's going to just become so unpopular that it's going to have to stop. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be this year. I don't think it's going to be next year. Maybe in the next 4, 8, maybe 10 years, we're going to start seeing this shit happen. But, I mean, the sign of the times are right now. We're seeing it with Trump and we're seeing it with Bernie. This is the most positive thing we can get out of this, is that we're starting to – the establishment is losing its grip on the propaganda and the information.
It's completely
That's what it is.
True. And we're seeing, I think, something that's very important, and the silver lining in all this, really, because what Kevin was saying, Trump or Bernie, for that matter, they're not going to come in. They're not going to save this country. If anything, they've got some policies that I think would make things worse. With that being said, it's a step in the right direction away from the Bushes, the Clintons, the Rubios, whoever the establishment wants. We're finally taking at least a step towards where we want to go.
Baby steps.
And maybe we're not getting there as fast as we would like to. And, maybe we'll, all implode before we get there. But I think there is a little bit of hope in all this craziness and the circus that we're watching. It's just...
I don't know. Have you ever seen that movie, Idiocracy?
Oh, yeah, we're there, too.
Yeah, hope. H-O-A-P. Hope.
It's like 1984 meets Idiocracy. I mean, you really can't make this up.
I'm just trying to be positive for once. I can go back to being how I usually am and tell everybody to give up. I mean, whatever. Whatever works. We can talk about Shane McMahon coming back on WWE last night because we're all screwed. Who cares?
Oh, man. That being said, I guess there is some relatively positive developments on the food front. We didn't really get to it too much in the last show or before that, but Claire actually wrote a great article about glyphosate, and we had another update on it today about now how the FDA is actually going to start testing our food for glyphosate. I mean, this is a chemical it's the main ingredient in Roundup, which obviously everyone knows is produced by Monsanto, everyone's favorite company. But this stuff was just last year, the year before was designated likely to be carcinogenic to human beings, and this stuff is present in a lot of the stuff we eat. Not only the stuff we eat, it's even present in our T-shirts, it's in our cotton, it's in our tampons, and all that stuff, and it's causing cancer. At least it's likely to cause cancer, and it's been highly suspected to cause cancer. And the FDA hadn't even been testing for this stuff, but they just announced that they're going to. And we posted another story today on glyphosate about a new study that came out that showed that all the research that's out there, at least a lot of the research that makes this stuff that the FDA is using to regulate it, is pretty much flawed or outdated. Claire, what do you think?
Yeah, so the study that the FDA really pointed to when it tested for levels and when it when it sets the levels of allowable glyphosate in our food, all the research was really there and pointed to the dangers of glyphosate early on. But Monsanto, when they went to get approval, sort of discredited all these studies because they weren't operating on they were operating on traditional models. And even though all of these studies were scientifically rigorous and they had all of the data necessary to show that glyphosate is really dangerous, they didn't go with that research. They just discredited it and instead went with some kind of outdated and skewed information and submitted that to get their approval for glyphosate use on crops. And so glyphosate is sprayed everywhere. And now we have, the crops are overly tolerant of the stuff and the weeds are overly tolerant of the stuff. And so it's being sprayed in huge, huge quantities. And then now they're also using it, apparently, farmers are using it to dry out the leaves to make harvesting easier. It's not even necessary. It's just some extra step. Why not spray more? So it's everywhere. They've measured it in the rainfall. They've measured it in groundwater. It's in everything, and it's a probable carcinogen. So this is a huge problem.
Yeah, I mean, the one reason why they're using it on wheat is so they can get like a uniform harvest. They want to kill all the wheat at one time, so it's all very uniform, all the same size and all the same, maturity level, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I mean, this stuff has increased huge amounts. I mean, it was developed initially, I think, glyphosate was initially patented by Monsanto back, I think, in the 70s. And it was such a successful chemical for them that's when they developed these Roundup Ready crops where they could actually spray it directly on, instead of just spraying it as a weed killer. They're spraying it directly onto these corn and soybean crops and cotton crops, and the plants aren't affected by it, and everything else is, and all the weeds around it, but then it seeps into the groundwater and it gets into the atmosphere. There's been studies that show that it's even in the rainwater and stuff like that. They use so damn much of it that it's in everything now. And now last year we find, oh, by the way, guys, it causes cancer. We've known about this, our own internal studies have known about this for decades, but, now the World Health Organization is finally getting around to looking at this. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we see so many different types of cancer coming out lately. I mean, I can't, maybe this is anecdotal or whatever, but, it wasn't, 100 years ago, we didn't have all these different types of cancer and all these people dying of cancer, but now it's all these chemicals, and whether it's the pesticides or the fracking or the nuclear energy or whatever, I mean, all this technology is being used for, mostly either defense motivated or offense motivated or profit motivated, without thinking about the side effects or the things that it's going to do to the environment and to the people and to all the animals and stuff that are here on the earth. That kind of is disregarded, or it's like an afterthought. The first thing we think is, can we kill people with it, or can we make money with it? If yes, develop it. If no, then don't develop. This is the kind of thinking that is running the country and the world right now. And this is the kind of thinking that I think that if it continues, it's going to lead to very bad scenarios, whether we're talking about environmental catastrophes, natural disasters, world wars, or whatever. This kind of thinking is going to lead the earth as a whole down this path of destruction. And this is the kind of thinking that I think we need to combat. I think Bernie Sanders taps into that a little bit, and that I appreciate him for that. Maybe his solutions are off, but he does tap into that, and I think that's something that should be appreciated, if anything else, from his candidacy.
And also, I want to emphasize something too. There's not really. We don't know yet what the safe levels actually are for glyphosate in humans, and everybody has pointed to the cotton study and said, it's like feminine products that are really dangerous with the glyphosate tainting, but that actually applies to things like bandages used in surgery and to dress wounds and everything else. It is all cotton products that have glyphosate, virtually all, because there's so much of it is genetically modified and thus treated with glyphosate. So that's a really important point that I think needs to be addressed as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you're wearing a cotton shirt right now, you're wearing Monsanto on your back. I mean, we can't get any more blunt than that. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, but it feels like we live in a culture where everything gives you cancer. Like, everything's unhealthy. I probably saw a couple of memes this week that gave me cancer.
Yeah, because you're in that. You were in that Bernie Sanders dank meme stash. Those memes in there will definitely give you eye cancer.
Well, luckily I've been cured and saved because I'm now banned from that. But
you got banned from the dankness. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I was too dank for the dankness.
Yeah, you are too dank.
But going more along the path of health and stuff that's bad for you, I kind of want to turn a little bit towards another story, and something we kind of hit on last night. It's a story we put up yesterday on antimedia.org, and it's a story you wrote to Claire about the gas leak in Texas. And we didn't really have a lot of time last night for you to get into it, but I think it's a very important story that's affecting a lot of people. Just right before I got here to San Diego, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, yesterday when we were getting the story up, I was looking through images to find a thumbnail for your article, Claire, and as I was looking more into the story from other angles, and I saw a picture that I recognized. It was a sign for a neighborhood, which is right down the street from where I was in Texas a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and this was the epicenter of this leak. So it kind of, for me, you hear about a lot of this stuff, but it really hits home when you realize, oh, wow, people are affected by this. You've seen this, like, it's really scary. Claire, tell us more about what's actually happening in the northern Texas, but really a lot grander area than just North Texas.
Yeah, this encompasses, it's sort of centered around like the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which is like a metroplex for people who aren't familiar with it. And what is going on is that the fracking industry in Texas is not very well regulated whatsoever, because obviously everybody knows that oil is big in Texas, and the politicians are kind of in bed with the regulators, and everybody wants to protect the profit for the state and protect the industry. So what happens is there are like 5 monitoring stations for the entire Barnett Shale, which is a very large area. And so fracking goes on, and methane leaks and benzene and nitrogen oxides and all other sorts of chemicals that are just terrible, that are known carcinogens, some of them. And we're talking about heavily populated areas where this goes on.
They're heavily populated.
Yes, exactly. And with faulty equipment and things, because they lack so much monitoring, they don't necessarily know if something's leaking or not. So what has resulted is that this area there's constantly a leak that's even worse than at the worst point that happened with the Aliso Canyon leak in California. And this is going on all the time, and it's not likely to stop because the regulators have, even though they're already in bed with the corporations, the regulators have been greatly defunded. So they don't have money to set out new equipment or to go around and monitor the various stations and find out where the leak is coming from. So all of these leaky wells and faulty equipment are just constantly producing, this cloud of chemicals in the atmosphere. And it's poisoning people. The symptoms in California with nosebleeds and dizziness and respiratory ailments and all of that, it's happening in Texas, all over the Barnett Shale, and then south on the Eagle Ford Shale as well. This is a huge, huge problem.
And this is reaching up into southern Oklahoma as well, if I believe.
I'm sure it is, and that's, I only included really the Texas issue in this, but if you take, say, Pennsylvania, I know has a really bad problem with their fracking industry. Really probably any state that has a lot of fracking probably has the same problem with varying levels of regulation and monitoring and such, but this is a problem with this specific industry, and it's not going away.
Well, I can tell you, I can't speak for a lot of the other states, but I can tell you from my own eyes, I've seen it. There is a ton of fracking going on in Texas right now, and it's scary. I mean, and the thing about it, too, is Texas is considered, a more conservative state usually, and the more conservative people are sometimes more prone to be for fracking. But from my experience and what I've seen from people in Texas, they're completely against it because they see the effects of it in their communities.
Yes.
Oh, and wait till you come back home because they're actually, I believe it's St. Clair County is sitting on top of one of the largest natural shale formations in the United States. So you're going to see a lot more fracking done in and around the Birmingham metro area within the next 10 years.
Well, at least you get some free methane exposure. You don't have to go get high on, nitrous and stuff anymore.
I'll continue to get high on nitrous. Come on, man.
Fracking is like the poster child of, unhinged environmental exploitation. It's one of these things where it's like, look, we can pump a bunch of messed up chemicals into the ground, mix it with the drinking water supply, and shit. We may even have to empty out people's water tables to get the water to pump it in. And we're cracking part of the crust of the earth to release gas out. I mean, anybody looking at this from the outside is like, well, that sounds like a really bad idea.
Here's the crazy thing. We have, especially with Bernie Sanders, and you get the back and forth on climate change. You get a back and forth on a lot of this stuff. Who out there thinks fracking is good for anything? Like, this is a no-brainer.
The Republican Party. At least they're open about it. I mean, Obama. Here's the thing.
At all.
Here's the funny thing.
For any reason. Thinks this is a good idea.
Because we both know that both parties are all okay with fracking. Because if you look at the numbers alone, fracking has
Their bank
expanded.
accounts or
fracking?
the
No,
numbers?
Let's look at the fracking numbers. Fracking has expanded under Obama more than. I mean, it's a relatively new technology, but fracking has expanded more under Obama than any other president ever. And now the United States has become the single largest producer of natural gas, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's got a war on gas and a war." It's like, what the hell are you guys smoking? He's like, Obama is like the most friendly guy to fracking out there. The Republicans, I mean, at least they're openly saying like, "Oh, we got to drill, baby, drill." But the Democrats, the Democratic establishment, it's like, "Oh, no, we got to worry about the climate and the environment." Quietly, we're gonna go ahead and just let these fracking companies run rampant across the country. Who cares if even, the other thing that we haven't even mentioned yet here, okay, now we know fracking causes cancer. We know fracking is leaking out methane, causing methane poisoning. Fracking is causing earthquakes, dude. I mean, it's causing earthquakes in
Oklahoma's having earthquakes. Claire, go ahead.
Okay, so you were mentioning something about the people not necessarily wanting fracking industry, even though like the whole state is kind of awash in it. And actually, Texas, there was a little town called Denton, Texas, that beat corporations and actually banned fracking in their community. This was like kind of the test subject, and this little tiny town managed to beat fracking and push the industry out. And a court reversed the decision, and then the state banned fracking bans. And that was the state where it originated. This is where all that happened.
Ban on bans. I mean, this is some Orwellian stuff. But I remember that happening. The governor signed it into law, and it really happened. And the people of Denton, Texas, they went out there and sat in front of that driveway and said, "You know what? None of your trucks are getting through."
Man,
and you know what happened to them? They got dragged off by the police.
There was a song back in the day written by one of my favorite bands, Blur, UK band. They had a song called "Don't Bomb the Bomb." It kind of reminds me of that. Ban the ban, don't ban the ban. That's what we're living in. We're living in this crazy, insane society where you banning stuff that kills people.
Yeah, and that's the same thing they're doing right now in Congress. Developments coming in pretty much weekly on this. It's known as the DARK Act. I think they're calling it the Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act, which is like the most Orwellian title of a bill you could ever come up with. It's almost like calling something the Patriot Act that spies on everybody. Oh wait, they did that too. But yeah, there's this thing.
There's
going
a Freedom
on
Act now.
Oh, yeah,
hey,
Freedom
there's
Act.
a Freedom.
That
Freedom.
allows the corporations to spy on you and stuff and sell your information to the government. But anyway, there's this DARK Act going through Congress too that is essentially kind of the same thing. Any state trying to ban GMOs or trying to put a label on GMOs, they're going in at the federal level, they're trying to preemptively put a ban on doing any of that stuff too. And so you see what's going on here is there's like people on the ground, I think it was Vermont that passed that GMO labeling statewide, act, and they're getting ready to start enforcing it. They're trying to jam through this federal regulation before the state can enact any of that stuff, so that they're putting a ban on labeling, states labeling GMOs and stuff like that. But what you're seeing here is a disconnect between the public and what they want, and the political establishment, the corporate establishment, whatever. To me, I consider it one and the same. And what they want, and it harkens right back to this election. I mean, the people want Bernie Sanders, the people want Donald Trump, the establishment want Marco Rubio, the establishment want Hillary Clinton. And so there's a disconnect. When you have an oligarchy, this is what happens. The people want one thing, and the politicians give you a whole other thing.
And they're taking away the ability for the people to protest, like through their money or through their communities, or they're taking away all of our vehicles to stand up against anything.
That's unfortunately the society we're living in. That's what we're facing. I mean, Bernie Sanders' camp right now is seeing that, taking away. When did we have it? When in my lifetime have I seen people have real legitimate power? Ever so often you see something happen.
Every once in a while,
And then it's this huge victory for, 10 years or 20 years or whatever it is when something is prevented or stopped. But realistically, this stuff is getting through way more often than not. We're living in a society where we're being dictated to about our health, about the air we're breathing, about the food we eat, about the politicians we're given, about where our tax dollars go, about the people who are killed by those tax dollars, about the wars that are started for complete economic interest.
Now, Mr. Gibson, now wait now just for a second. If you want to make a difference, then you go out to your polls and you go vote. Isn't that what you're told?
Well,
I mean, that's the only way through this situation is go take your voice and your vote down to the polls and go vote. I mean, that'll solve everything, right?
If you don't vote, you got no right to complain either.
Well,
there you go. There you go.
This is something that voting has taught me. I learned a very valuable lesson. The other day, me and Nick went out and we did something that I had never personally done before. It was frisbee golf or
disc golf.
Disc golf. Okay.
Oh man, I definitely would have. I would have paid money to see that.
Oh yeah. So I had never done it before, and technically on the sheet of paper, I lost. And then I got to thinking about it. I didn't like that. I didn't like that outcome. So I decided that I was going to start counting super delegates towards my score. And then I realized I won, and they lost.
Yes. Yes.
So, why can't we do that with everything? If that's how our political system runs, why can't we do that with everything in life and just go, nah, never mind, I won?
Exactly.
It's basically like being the kid playing a video game about to get beat, and you just turn it off real quick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I used to do that all the time. Old school Nintendo, yeah.
If we went out to the basketball court or we went out to go play football at a local park and we played with a bunch of other people, and at the end of the game we said, hey, you know what? You guys beat us and stuff, but since we know the referees and we know how to run the point, the point board, and we know how to change the numbers on the point board, because we have that knowledge or we have those connections, we know those people. Sorry, guys, even though you worked harder and even though you beat us and even though you outplayed us, we still win fair and square because we have the connection. That's what Hillary Clinton is doing to Bernie Sanders.
That's it. They know the people that made the scoreboard. They know the people that made the gym, and they know the people keeping score.
How pissed off would you be if you were the team that legitimately won and then you saw someone else come in? Nope, sorry guys, we know the ref. You guys lost. That's just it.
Hillary Clinton.
How pissed off are you going to be? That's how Bernie Sanders supporters are going to feel in a few months, dude. And it's going to be. I mean, I'm telling you, man, this is going to be a dynamic that we haven't seen in recent times.
There's those supporters.
You saw very little. You got a taste of it in 2012 with Ron Paul, and even that little taste started a lot of things, and started a lot of actions, and got a ball rolling in certain directions.
I mean, there's a big part of anti-media that started out of Ron Paul getting screwed over. I believe. I think people seeing the system for what it was. You think that, you're young, you have these huge ideals, and you think, oh, wow, we're going to change something. And you're so naive, and you think, oh, we can do this. And then all of a sudden you're like, that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
Why am I an idiot?
And so, let's keep it on this topic of Ron Paul. And back to Claire. I mean, Claire, you're writing all these great stories. Ron Paul was, as anyone probably knows, he was the guy that was always up there talking about the Federal Reserve. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Independent, Republican, or you don't vote. You know that Ron Paul hates the Federal Reserve, right? So we got a great story up on the anti-media about how Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump have at least one major thing in common, and that both of them want to audit the Fed. And coincidentally, they're both the guys that are being getting the short end of the stick from the establishment. Well, that's
I will say in Teddy Cruz's case, he says it, and that's kind of how the whole Trump thing came about. Which Rand Paul was screaming it over and over and over, but nobody was listening to him. Ted Cruz was, let's audit the Fed, and then when you have the vote for Rand Paul's bill, Ted Cruz doesn't even bother to show up to vote. And yet he gets on, behind his pulpit to talk about it, doesn't vote.
Yeah, he was probably chilling out with his wife that works for Goldman Sachs. Oh, coincidentally.
He was stirring the Kool-Aid down there in Guyana, Jim Jones.
I'll tell you what, though, the Federal Reserve is one of those topics in mainstream politics that are not allowed to be touched. The Federal Reserve has basically zero governmental oversight. The people, the voting populace of the United States have zero say over the Federal Reserve, even less than what we have over Congress and the president and all that. They can't even tell the Fed what to do. And that the Fed is Bernie Sanders actually brought this up. The governors of the Fed, the people basically the board members, I think 3 of the last 4 board members of the Fed are from Goldman Sachs. I mean, this is the central bank of the United States. It's the single largest and most powerful banking entity in the entire world, and it's basically controlled by Goldman Sachs and a handful of other banking elites that are able to dictate the entire economic cycle of the entire world. And they also bankroll the military-industrial complex. They print the money. This is what happens. The Fed prints the money. They give it to the bank loans it to the government. The government uses it to pay for the wars. And then our Social Security numbers are left on the hook as collateral, and we all got to pay that shit back. Our kids that aren't even born yet are already in debt, 60, 50, 60, 70,000 bucks to the Fed that we all got to pay back. I mean, this is the single largest conspiracy that in the history of the United States, and 2 of the not mainstream, but 2 of the big candidates out there right now are actually willing to talk about it. That itself is pretty big.
Whether they do it or not, at least the conversation's happening, and that's, again, a step in the right direction. Again, forgive me for being a little bit positive. Shannon, go ahead.
I got a quick question for everybody, real quick before we, because I know we've got a few minutes left. Now, it really doesn't matter for as far as Hillary and Bernie are concerned, but who is going to be the sexy running mate for Donald Trump?
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of hoping Dennis Rodman gets it because that would be amazing.
God, that would be so great. Oh man.
But
any chance that Palin will be tapped?
Nope, not going to happen. Right now, based, which, leans more towards the establishment. Me and Nick were talking about this earlier. Rubio is the only one without any blood on his face right now from Trump beating him senseless. So it's possible, they could cut a deal and it could be Rubio. I've heard some people, since the stuff Trump's been saying in the past week, it could be Rand Paul. But Rand Paul came out yesterday or today and said that he's not endorsing anybody, plus he despises Donald Trump. John Kasich, it just seems so vice presidential to me. That man's he's just got vice president.
Do you think that he'll pull one from the stage, or do you think that he might go outside of
I feel like he could take one from the stage because he's so outside. He's never served in office, and I feel like he's going to need a politician to give him some sort of leverage running against these other politicians. I could be wrong about that.
I think that if Trump takes on Rubio, which I think is a very likely scenario, that's the establishment insurance policy, and that also act as leverage over top of Trump. It's like, hey, buddy, if you don't keep in line, we got Rubio to step in place for you. I'm not saying, I don't take that as you will. I think
Lyndon Johnson
ends up taking the nomination and takes an outsider as a running mate. I think the Republican establishment would literally support Hillary Clinton. Because she would act more in their interests when it comes to foreign policy and neoliberal
with
trade
everything.
You got a point there.
Everything except for maybe social issues, where Hillary Clinton is actually a little bit to the left of the center. On foreign policy and on trade.
Social issues are those are talked about to get votes. The real issues are these corporate interest issues that we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's the interest they actually care about. Everything else is just to pander to people.
Exactly. If you if you were to remove the name Hillary Clinton and you remove the social issues and you just looked at the bare policies that she's put forward and the stuff she's supported in the past, you wouldn't be able to tell if she was a Republican or a Democrat. If you look at the documents, if you look at the foreign policy, the economics, it's like you can't tell.
I would say she's a Republican. I'd say she's a Bush-style Republican.
If you look at more traditional ideas of foreign policy, you would say, okay, yeah, that's definitely a Republican. And so I think that honestly, I think the political establishment, if it did come down to Trump and they didn't have an insurance policy in the form of a Marco Rubio type of VP, well, then they would actually not even want their guy to get elected. They would rather have Hillary Clinton. And that's the only way she's actually going to win, because she's not really electable. She's not an electable candidate. The only way she would win is if that scenario happened. So I don't know. If Trump goes with an outsider, I think that it would be much more entertaining, but I don't think that they would allow it to happen. I really don't. But I guess, we're still going to have to see how this thing plays out.
I think Hillary Clinton...
We all have opinions on how this electoral system
works.
We do,
and it's a lot of, projection, and especially with the way things are going right now, it's, I don't think anybody can predict the insanity that's happening. You were talking about how you can't tell the difference between Hillary Clinton. I think she, was created in the same cauldron as Dick Cheney, because that's what it seems like at this point. And we can sit here and we can talk about Hillary. Who would Hillary get as a running mate? So the only thing sustainable for her to win would be to get Bernie
The
Sanders.
only way she would be an electable candidate in a pure vacuum would be Bernie Sanders vice president, to have that extra voting block that he brings.
And Bernie Sanders has not gone after her. The only thing he kind of went after her tonight on, which Hillary Clinton, good grief, gave the most ridiculous answer I've ever heard, which, par for the course with her, about her Goldman Sachs speeches. He's attacked her on that, and that's it. He's kind of given her a pass on everything else that she should be in prison for. And the Goldman Sachs speeches, of course, Bernie said, you can read anything, because I've never given one. And, if you can find a speech I gave to somebody for money, then, yeah, go ahead, release transcript. I don't care. And then Hillary gives this glorious Clinton answer of, well, I'm going to need, because you're picking on me, which she's insinuating she's getting picked on because she's a woman. If we're going to do that, then everybody has to release every transcript of every speech they've ever given, and that includes the Republicans. It's like, woman, you're not running against the Republicans, you're running against Bernie Sanders. Shut up.
At this point, she may just be running to stay out of jail. Or at least, if not jail, if not jail, at least a condemned or a slap on the wrist by the FBI.
Listen, I think she's doing exactly what LBJ did. I think LBJ was going to get dropped from the ticket in '64 with Kennedy, and he had to become president to keep himself from going to jail. And I think Hillary's running to become president to keep herself out of jail. I think it's the exact same thing.
That's an interesting theory. I don't doubt that.
She knows if she can get there, she can make this go away. Otherwise, it's going to come down on her.
The other thing, though, is that, look at the Justice Department.
Trump said he would prosecute her.
The Justice Department has been completely
yeah, I'd like to see that happen.
So I think that she's done enough deeds in her political career and has enough connections to avoid prosecution.
Yeah, it ain't going to happen.
But, again, you never know. There's a major mob forming to try to put her under, especially coming from the more radical wing of the Republican Party. Those people literally hate Hillary Clinton, and they probably don't even understand the depths of the stuff that she's done foreign policy wise, as to what her her real crimes are. They hate her because they have their reasons and stuff. But Hillary Clinton. There's a lot of legitimate reasons for people on the left to be saying that she needs to go to jail. Look at this, the recent revelations we found out about Honduras, and this is the thing that when she was giving that speech tonight in the town hall, I was like, she was talking about how countries like South Korea.
Yeah, she was saying Libya to South Korea.
Yeah, she's like, South Korea had to endure coup attempts and this, that, and the other. It's like, you supported a coup in 2009 in Honduras. What in the hell are you talking about? And she's acting like she's supporting democracy and shit. She supports coups in Honduras while she supposedly supports democracy in Libya down the barrel of a drone. This, dude, it is psychopathic. It's sociopathic completely.
It's not a coup. It's freedom.
There you go. Freedom coup.
Yeah.
It is.
Freedom coup.
If you're taking... if it's at the barrel of a gun and dropping bombs on children, well, they're setting those people free. Corpses, you can't be a slave and a corpse at the same time. So technically, they are.
They're in a better place now.
They are. They're bringing freedom to people by killing them. They're liberating their souls from their body. They never explain that part. Liberation! And that's what we're dealing with. Man. What are we going to do? Look at what's in front of us. Even we're sitting here talking about, this great positive we got, at least we got Bernie and Trump.
That's God, man, it must be really bad to have to say that.
I know, that's how bad it is. Hey, remember that guy that used to host that TV show? I'm gonna vote for him for president now. Oh my God, so screwed. That's it for us. Then we'll be back tomorrow night.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.